Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I'm super excited you're here today because we're going to take a really fascinating look under the hood at the underlying mechanics of American politics. So let's just dive right into it. Picture this: a late-night press conference at the White House wraps up, and the tone on trade or energy policy shifts just a tiny bit. Well, by the very next morning, a foreign market is tanking, and supply chain logistics halfway across the globe are completely rewritten. It's wild, right? How exactly does a single fleeting political moment create ripples that literally wash over our everyday lives and crash right onto the global stage? Well, today we're going to unpack exactly how that happens. By looking closely at the institutional leverage and the complex dynamics of the U.S. political system, we'll see exactly how one speech connects to worldwide shockwaves.
So, let's start right at the beginning with Section 1, the 30-second political spark.
30. Yep, 30 seconds. In today's hyper-connected political world, a 30-second soundbite is literally all it takes to completely shift the tectonic plates of public discourse. We live in this era where information moves at lightning speed, and half a minute is more than enough for a single decision or even just a nuanced implication to completely dominate the news cycle. It instantly shapes tomorrow's headlines and sparks millions upon millions of conversations online. It's basically a micro moment that gets heavily amplified by algorithms and rapid-fire media, igniting a massive fire of public engagement and immediate political reaction.
And right after that spark, a single decision naturally draws some wildly different perspectives. You've definitely seen this play out. Supporters might instantly call that 30-second speech a bold step for America's future, while at the exact same time, critics are arguing that it raised more questions than answers. But you know, this isn't just about people having different opinions. We're looking at the reality of modern hyperpartisanship and algorithmic echo chambers. The exact same soundbite is packaged and delivered to audiences in entirely different ways. And neither side's reaction is ignored by the political machinery. In fact, both reactions are used to drive fundraising and fire up the base. That's exactly why truly understanding the landscape means you have to zoom out. You've got to compare the raw data, listen to the underlying anxieties of different perspectives, and really think critically to cut through all that noise before you draw your own conclusions.
Let's move along and see how this builds in Section 2, Why the World Watches.
Because here's the thing. A U.S. election is about so much more than just picking a president. We're talking about massive shifts in the economy, volatile swings in stock markets, and sweeping changes to things like immigration, healthcare, and education. And it definitely doesn't stop at the country's borders. Just think about how a sudden domestic policy shift, like say a new aggressive stance on manufacturing subsidies, can instantly impact foreign markets, forcing allied nations to totally restructure their own trade agreements overnight. Every single time a ballot is cast, it has the potential to alter these massive, interconnected global systems.
And the sheer weight of that global impact really just comes down to one fundamental fact. The United States is one of the world's largest economies. Because of that massive economic footprint, U.S. political decisions are just never merely a domestic affair. They directly dictate international trade routes, they dramatically influence global energy prices, they shape the future regulation of emerging tech, and they underwrite international security alliances. That is exactly why a 30-second speech or a single election in America is treated as a highly localized event by citizens and governments basically everywhere on the globe.
Which brings us to the mechanics of the government driving all of these impacts. Section 3, the power of the president.
To really grasp that global and domestic impact, we have to look at the immense authority given to the U.S. president. Now, beyond simply signing or vetoing legislation, the real modern power lies in directing federal agencies. With legislative gridlock becoming so common these days, presidents consistently lean on executive orders and agency directives to bypass stalled congressional negotiations. This lets the executive branch unilaterally reshape environmental regulations, alter immigration enforcement, and pivot national security strategies almost overnight. It's just a staggering amount of leverage, allowing one office to project immense power both at home and abroad.
But despite all that concentrated leverage we were just talking about, there's a fundamental rule right at the core of the U.S. political anatomy. The president cannot act alone. Honestly, this is probably the most vital component of the entire system. The immense authority of the executive branch is intentionally bottlenecked. A president might dictate a bold new direction, but without the structural and financial backing of the broader government, that unilateral power is going to hit a brick wall pretty fast.
So let's look at the exact mechanism that enforces those limits. Section 4, Congress and shared power.
The legislative branch is designed to be the ultimate counterweight. Congress, with its two-part structure of the Senate and the House of Representatives, was not built for speed.
In fact, it was intentionally designed by the founders to be slow, highly deliberative, and yeah, often deeply frustrating. But this structural friction forces compromise. By making it super difficult to pass sweeping legislation rapidly, the system ensures that sudden populist waves or really aggressive executive ambitions get bogged down in debate, committee hearings, and procedural hurdles. So it's not a bug, it's an intentional feature meant to prevent an unchecked executive.
And this creates a very purposeful institutional tension. While the president acts kind of like the CEO, directing the massive array of federal agencies and executing foreign policy, Congress holds the all-important purse strings and the oversight gavels. So an executive order might launch a shiny new initiative, but it's Congress that actually has to fund it. If they refuse, well, the initiative dies. Congress can subpoena officials, delay political appointments, and relentlessly investigate the executive branch's actions. It's this brilliant high-stakes game of tug-of-war, specifically designed so that power is shared and constantly contested, rather than just concentrated in one place.
Now, let's bring the lens all the way back to you. Section 5. Why your vote matters.
Ultimately, all that massive institutional friction we just discussed, it's completely fueled by the individual voter. When citizens actually head to the polls, they're rarely thinking about abstract constitutional theories or foreign market volatility. They are responding to how global macroeconomic shifts actually show up in their hometowns. A massive geopolitical trade dispute eventually trickles down to become anxiety over local manufacturing jobs. Federal healthcare debates turn into highly personal kitchen table discussions about prescription costs. This is where the political spark from our first section actually starts, with these deeply personal, everyday anxieties bubbling up to shape the national mandate.
And that brings us to a really fascinating reality of a polarized democracy. Different voters can reach entirely different yet completely valid conclusions based on the exact same set of national data. It's true. Two people can look at the same economic report and see drastically different paths forward depending on their core priorities. One person might prioritize rapid economic growth and deregulation, while the other looks at that same data and prioritizes public safety nets and infrastructure. That diversity of thought is exactly why understanding the underlying mechanics of the system is so crucial. Because when you grasp how the institutional levers actually work, you can evaluate differing policies way more effectively and understand exactly why political opponents see a totally different solution to the exact same problem.
Which brings us to our final takeaway. Section 6, the ripple effect in everyday life. So the big point we've explored today is that politics is a continuous, totally dynamic feedback loop. The micro and the macro are just inextricably linked. A 30-second soundbite taps into a local voter's anxiety, which shapes an election, which alters the balance of power in Congress, which ultimately limits or empowers the president to make a decision that shifts the entire global economy. Understanding this complex anatomy really helps us navigate the noise and participate a lot more effectively in democracy. So let me leave you with this question to think about. Which issue do you think should be the top priority for U.S. leaders right now? Think about everything we've covered today, from local jobs all the way to global markets. I'd love for you to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Keep comparing the facts, keep analyzing those systems of leverage, and I will see you in the next explainer.